Welcome to Tommy Solo's Famous Friends. This is where I get to chat with people who I've connected with over the years in the world of arts and entertainment, and today we are going with our inaugural episode of the new series, The Singers, and I'm so glad to start this off with Holly Woods from the band Toronto. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Tommy. You know, as always, I appreciate talking to you anytime, whether it be music or whether it be fishing.
Well, if it were possible, I would put you in my boat and get you into some fishing as well.
If it were possible, I would walk up there and jump in the boat myself.
Yeah, well, fishing is so good for the soul, and that's pretty much why I do it. But anyway, for people who may not be familiar with who you are, as we're all of a certain age at this point in time, and I will just say that Holly Woods is your stage name, and you are Anne Elizabeth Woods. And at some point in time, young Annie made her way from Durham, North Carolina, via San Francisco to Toronto in the mid-70s. You did the bar scene for a while, and then in 1977, along with guitarist Brian Allen, you started the band Toronto. And most of us boomers in Canada are very familiar with the band Toronto. Now, as I recall, when I spoke to you the first time, you said that singing wasn't as natural for you as we would assume, and that you gave it a shot. You were inspired by your older brother, is that right? And his music?
My stepbrother played guitar, and when my father remarried to his mom, and they moved in with us, he was constantly playing his guitar, and I would hear this great music coming out of his amplifier because he was picking up some Jimi Hendrix and he was picking up some Led Zeppelin. It was during those years. And I was hearing all this fantastic music coming from him and his guitar. And I started just kind of humming along one day and, starting to learn the words to the songs because he would play them constantly. And he said, you've got a really good voice. You ever think about singing? And I said, well, I play a little bit of acoustic guitar and I do a little Bobby Gentry and stuff like that, but, nothing really. And so we would kid around and mess around with him on guitar and me on singing every once in a while, some little acoustic number or whatever, but nothing came of it until his neighborhood band needed a singer. And they had just run through about everybody there was in the area. So he said, why don't you come on in and just give it a shot? He said, don't think anything of it. Just give it a shot. So I went in and, nervous as I was and with a vibrato that was like, sounded like I was very cold. I sang and, it went pretty well. We did a couple of tunes and I went home and didn't think anything else of it because I thought for sure, no way they're going to call me. And my best friend had also been asked to come in and sing. And so she went in and sang and they wanted her and they called her immediately and said, you're in. And she said, well, I'm thinking about going to the beach pretty soon and I'm really into hairstyling, so I'm going to have to say no. So I got the gig by default. And I learned that I actually had a voice. I found my soul and I found my inspiration in letting it all out and listening to Janice and learning the issues of all the singers that came before me and the things they had to go through and witness and the lyrics they wrote and the passion they felt. I felt as well because I'd had a pretty tough going myself up until that time as a child. So I could relate to singing as a way of releasing all that pent-up emotion and darkness that I had been dragging around through my childhood. And that's how it all really got started for me. And I just sunk everything I had into it.
Well, this is something and
that's how it came out.
This is something that a lot of the fans really don't have any inclination or idea about, is that really, in order to sing the blues, you have to live the blues. And I can tell you from my personal experience, I was a professional musician for a long time before I actually found my soul. And for me, it took losing my only son, and to feel that devastation and that trauma, and I feel like all the best, really the best of the best singers, including yourself, have had some sort of tragedy, some sort of deep, dark sadness in their lives in order to, like, as you say, release it in song.
Yes. In order to release it and give it a place to go, that's where the music comes in. It's like unbridling all that horror just comes out, and it comes out in your soul, in your blues, in the way you feel a note on guitar or vocal, the way you bend a string. You can play a full solo in one note on guitar if you really feel it. And that's one thing that just came out of me when I started singing. I knew that it was my musical therapy. It was my way of expressing to the world and everybody else what I had been through and how I felt about it. And I know there are more people like us out there that have the blues too. And I wanted them to come along with us on the journey.
Well, you mentioned a one-note guitar solo, and it brings to mind Gary Moore, and Parisian Walkways. And it's so true. Or Carlos Santana, that endless sustain.
Yes.
And yourself as a singer, I remember there was a song that you used to do live where you did a bit of a battle with Brian Allen.
Yes, I have that. Somebody sent me a live tape of that from 40 years ago, I think, at the Ryerson Theater, and I was so grateful for someone to send me that. It's Boozy and Blue.
Right. And some of the notes that you hit, that just blew me away. And the other thing is that when you are unleashing your soul, that touches us in our souls as the audience and as your fans. And I think that people like yourself have, over the years, provided a very important service in the form of therapy, musical therapy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. For me, that's exactly what it was, because back in those early days, there was no such thing as therapy and, psychology and all that stuff. It was frowned upon, and plus, we had no money. So my mother died when I was very young, and I didn't know how to deal with it. So you go into a very dark place, as you well know, Tommy, losing your son. And those dark places can change you as a human being if you don't find a release for it. And music is our way of letting the world know that pain can come out in a beautiful way.
Absolutely.
If you express yourself honestly.
Absolutely.
And not just sing the song or play the song. You tell a story. I don't sing a song. I actually just tell a story. And the notes come out of that. I want you to know exactly what I'm talking about, and I want you to know the words I'm telling you have a note to them, that's true, but they also have a feel to them and a story. So I want to put the whole thing in there for you to enjoy and experience. And I think that's what we do with our blues, or with any music.
And, I've often said that in my earlier years as a musician, I feel like one of the reasons, aside from maybe not knocking on the right doors and so on, that I never really hit the big time when I was younger was because I didn't have a really unique voice. And I think that for me, I didn't have that connection with my soul until I had that tragedy that happened with my son. And, I've seen some really polished singers, and I'm sure you have as well, who just their soul wasn't connected, and they were hitting all the notes, but there was something really missing. There's
something missing.
Yeah.
The story is missing. It's sort of like reading off a page and doing a cold call for telephone surveys. It's, you're reading your script. That's what you're doing. And when you're up on stage and you've got your little iPad up there and you're reading the words, I'm not really getting much out of that myself. I don't want to hear it. I want to know the song as well.
It's
what are you singing? What are you telling me? What are you singing?
it's
And I
interesting.
can't really tell if you're just going to read the script to me.
It's interesting to
I mean?
me in the age of YouTube how many people there are who are getting paid to perform in front of people who are, like you say, they've got a special attachment on their mic stand for their iPad.
Yes, they're
And
reading a script. Yeah.
and they're reading a script, and the band is tight, and they're polished, but there isn't that edge, and there isn't that emotion, and I think that's also important.
Exactly.
Do you feel like at some point in your journey as a singer, did a switch go off for you? Like, did something just happen that unleashed your soul?
I think what happened with me was just being still, with the music itself, and also writing your own music. Telling your own story can turn you into a completely different performer overnight. If you just keep learning copy songs and doing other people's stuff, you're telling their story. Of course, you're telling it, your way. But when you write your own music and you really get out the story yourself, that's the real therapy of it all. And that's when it all clicked with me. And I got those ideas and those opinions and those how-tos, so to speak, from Ed King, who went on to play with Leonard Skinner. He was in a house band with me way back when I was just out of high school called Smokehouse. And he had just left Strawberry Alarm Clock. I'm sure you know who Ed King is.
Oh, absolutely. And I think most of our demographic know who Ed King is as well. Yeah, absolutely.
I would hope so. God rest his soul. One of the greatest guitarists who ever lived, one of the greatest songwriters who ever lived. But it was through him that I learned to listen to me. He said, geez, you're a great singer, Annie, but do you write? And I said, write what? He said, do you write your own music? Do you just sit down and write a story one day and put some music to it? And I said, yeah, I used to do a bit of that when I was younger, but I never really thought much of it. And he said, I want you to start doing that. Start doing that and bring it into me, and let's just mess around with it. And he's the first person that ever took me into a studio and just really showed me the ropes and helped me to find me. And I owe all that to Ed King. God bless him. What a great guitar player, great man. I'm getting a little teary on that one.
No doubt. The things that I didn't know, I'll tell you I learn more every time I talk to somebody like you. So I'm pretty grateful for the opportunity.
Well, I'm just so old, Tommy. I'm just so old. I think I've met just about everybody along the way.
It's funny, that I've had people say to me, wow, you've done so many things in your life. And I look younger than I am, and I always have. I was getting carded until I was in my 30s.
You do. You have a baby face for sure. And there's no doubt on that.
So people are surprised, when I say, well, I'm a lot older than what you think I am. And the reason I've had the opportunities to do all these different things is because I've been on this planet for over 6 decades, and like yourself, I know you're a little bit older than I am, and we won't be so rude as to disclose a lady's age, But it's...
I'm very proud of my age and my gray hair. I am 69, and my hair's almost fully gray now, and I'm proud of every wrinkle. Everyone.
My wife she's 12 years younger than I am, and it just happened that she was kind of following my journey and watching me from the wings as I was going through my darkest times, and it worked out really well. We're a really good match for each other. But she is very disappointed that she doesn't have a full head of gray hair yet.
No, she can always dye it. They've got that new hair dye for gray now, so she can always do that.
She said that she was going to wear it proud, and she's got a few little strands. But yeah, I really appreciate when people are proud of who they are, and you are certainly a prime example of that.
I'm comfortable in my skin. I am. I don't need company to have a great time and to enjoy myself. I just need my music and some solitude and time to think and enjoy nature and pretty much silly little walks on the beach and stuff like that. But mostly to be able to be alone with oneself and enjoy your own company and be comfortable in your own skin is something that we all strive for. And I wish that for everybody. I wish everybody could manage to get that together and not always have to be near someone or with someone or around a lot of people or whatever. Just learn to be with you and let it come to you. Just let everything come to you.
Well, it's interesting that you have that outlook because, and I know it's not all about me, but we keep going back and forth here. And the thing is that when I had suffered the loss of my son, at the same time or shortly afterwards, I was corporately downsized. And as it happened, they paid me severance for a year. So I dove right into the music. And at the time, I had the attitude that it looks like it's just me and the dog, and that's the way it's going to be. And I felt like I'm just going to live my life the way I want to live my life, and I'm not going to worry about any of the other trappings and whatever. And as it happened, because I was living my life honestly, and as I said, my wife was watching from the wings, and she fell in love with the real me, you know? And I think that all too often people put on a facade because they're trying to impress people and they're trying too hard. And then when you do connect with somebody, it's a false connection because they think you are that facade.
Exactly. And they don't know what a real connection is because it's all about material things and how to keep up with the Joneses. And you work so hard and try so hard to get the new car. And is it as good as my neighbors? And do they have a hot tub? I better get one too. And pretty soon, if something should happen and the bottom falls out and you're stuck with all these material things and you don't know what to do with yourself or how to handle your own finances, because you've fallen into the trap of, letting your money do it for you. And then when the money's gone, you know what they say.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Nobody knows you when you're down and out, Tommy.
Well, that's true. That's absolutely true.
Yeah, that is true.
That's when you find out who your real friends are.
You sure do, man. You find out quickly, very quickly. I'm here to tell you.
Now, I know that you are officially retired from the music business.
No, retired from touring with Toronto.
Oh, okay.
And that's something that I always have to straighten out. Simply retired from touring with Toronto. I just couldn't do the tours anymore. It was physically too much for me. But no, never retired from the music business. They'll carry me out with my microphone strung around my neck.
Well, that is absolutely good news because I had the wrong impression from, I guess, previous conversations with you.
At that time, Tommy, that we spoke, I was extremely depressed, my darling. So it's no wonder that I said that, because in the position I was in, the place I was living, and the way things were going at the time, yeah, I can see me saying that, but that was never really my intention. It was just what they call a bad patch.
Okay.
So I really did go through it there for a while. So we can straighten that out now. No retire from music. No, not this one.
Well, that's good news.
No.
Now, before I get into that, I just want to ask you, if I were, say, a 15 or 16-year-old youngster just starting out as a singer, what advice would you give me?
Always, always, always write. And always, always, always listen to yourself without any accompaniment or any of the fancy things that go with. Don't try to tweak and turn on little machines to alter your voice. Just put yourself into it along with your own words and your own little melody, even if it's simple. Just to start yourself off in being more you. Because you got to be comfortable with being you. Otherwise, they'll just sell you like, another Barbie doll or Ken doll. You've got to be individually you. And we are all such individuals. And most people just can't find themselves. So they attach themselves to someone else's persona or someone else's way of performing. You know what I mean? It's all about being you and finding a way to be you. Yeah, finding your own way without any fancy machines or, a bunch of people hanging around going, oh, I think you ought to do this. Oh, I think you ought to dress this way. Oh, I think you ought to do that. Just be you first. That would be my advice. Just be you. Have fun with it. So what if you're not on key perfectly all the time? Just hang with it. You're just an individual, and the way you tell a song may not always be perfectly executed. That may be the beauty of your voice.
I agree 100%. And I've said this many, many times, how I appreciate the time and effort that it goes into putting together a tribute act or a really top shelf cover band. But for me, from the early 2000s, I decided that I was no longer going to knock myself out trying to cover Deep Purple and Led Zeppelin and all these things, and just make myself blue in the face, trying to do this stuff just because I liked it. And I feel like for me personally...
and I'm right there with you. I did that too. Me too. I'm guilty.
And I feel like for me, I would much rather spend all that time and energy on my own thing. And I've never been happier. And, to that end, I did record a couple of cover tracks back in 2015 and 2016. And I won Cover Track of the Year 2015 and Cover Track of the Year 2016 back to back from the London Free Press. But that was, I feel like, because I did not cover Hooked on a Feeling and do it like B.J. Thomas. I didn't cover...
Right, yeah, you do it your own way.
Yeah, and I didn't cover Come and Get Your Love like Redbone. I felt like that was their thing. And if I'm going to pay homage, I'm going to pay homage, but I'm going to put my own stamp on it,
Absolutely. And it is definitely paying homage, too. It's not copying at all. It's paying homage. I do that all the time, especially with the old and the great singers from way back that I admire so much. I've been doing a lot of going back to them on my acoustic guitar and just myself. And that is paying homage. I don't consider that just copying down the line. So I agree with you on that for sure.
Well, I would love to see that. And I know that without you telling me, I know that if you were going to do Janis, you would do Janis via Holly. It would be you. It wouldn't be you just copying Janis. Editor's note for any of you younger people out there who wonder who Janis is, we are referring to the iconic rock goddess Janis Joplin. Look Janis Joplin up on YouTube and prepare to have your mind blown. Now back to the show.
Oh, yeah, it's really quite different. And you would think, because I've made it quite obvious of how much I love Janis, and she taught me so much. My God, of course, I never met her, but just what I'd read about her, and I had met a couple of her friends when I was out in California, and knowing more about her and listening to her as well sort of all fit together and made sense as to why she sounded the way she did. And the learning lesson was that Janis was Janis, and that was all there was to it. It didn't have to be complicated. It was just her. That's what I learned from Janis, how to be me.
Now, speaking of learning from people, are there any specific things that you do or have done over the years to look after your voice?
Specifically look after it?
Yeah.
You mean take care of my voice, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, for one thing, I had a big affinity to, well, of course, I think everybody knows this, though, is don't ever drink anything ice cold on stage or cold or anything like that, even though I know it's very hot on some of our gigs. Always drink tepid water. Take care of yourself that way. Always, please, singers, remember this. Always take a small vaporizer with you on the road. If you're from the east, especially, and you're used to a bit of humidity, when you go out west and you start singing, all of a sudden you're going to get, and you're going to wonder why. It's not because you're losing your voice or anything like that. It's because it's the dryness. You're only human, and your body is affected by the lack of humidity. And your voice needs that lubrication that we get, especially someone like me who, I only lived an hour and a half from the beach, but the humidity was always pretty big for me growing up. So I was used to that big humidity, and then I'd get out west and wonder what's going on here. I'm tacking here. What's going on? And it was simply, I just needed a vaporizer overnight to just give me some moisture, put some moisture back in my body that I was missing. So that's something you really need to do, is make sure you take a vaporizer in dry places. And get rest, get a lot of rest. I know it's tempting to partying and Staying up with the boys all night or staying up with the girls all night is fun, especially when you're really, really young and you can do it and get away with that. But honestly, that throat of yours really does need its rest. It really needs its rest. So don't do more than you think you can handle, because it's going to show on your voice for sure.
You hit on all of the main things that I've kind of stuck with as a singer as well. Now, I will admit that I never took a vaporizer on the road, but that applies to guitars as well. And the real pros have a humidifier in the room with their guitars.
Absolutely.
Your voice is an instrument, and it needs to be taken care of like a guitar or
exactly.
Or whatever.
And if we break a string, we can't replace it. So
that's true.
We have to really take care of that thing. And most of the guys and girls in the band don't understand when you've got a little issue or something. They think you should just be able to tweak it up and come on out and be fine. But if we break a string, we can't adjust it and put a new one on. This is all we've got. So, you have to really respect us for the fact that it all comes from within. It comes from our body, and we can't change our strings. We just can't. Much as we wish we could, we can't.
Absolutely. And Holly, there's an awful lot more that we can talk about, but I think that we're going to have to do that in part 2. So right now, I'm going to thank you so much for doing this with me again, and we will continue in part 2.
All right, Tommy. I enjoy talking to you always.
And I always enjoy speaking with Holly Woods whenever I can. And we did have a lot more to talk about. Check out part 2 to find out exactly what. Now, here, for your listening pleasure, is Holly Woods with her old band Toronto and Boozy and Blue. Check out her vocal histrionics. You won't believe it.
No friend of mine. Hell, I don't even like you much better than wine. I've turned to you to be my friend, and all you done was mess my head. I came in here about 1 hour ago, and I was feeling real sickly. I was feeling low, but the bartender, he's my doctor. I keep him well paid. If I keep standing up straight, I got it made. Well, I don't wanna go home, ain't nobody there, and my booze is supplied by good old Bill Hay. Hey, bartender, guess my age? Guess what? I just turned 27 today. And if you don't agree, how, baby, don't you mind me? I'm just boozy and blue. Shot of Jack Daniels. You see, I got this real bad cough. Here comes a bouncer, he works at that door. Oh Lord, I think I'm out on my ass once more. I think I'll go and crash in the park. Lots of my buddies go there after dark. And summer nights, Toronto, they don't last forever, And Jack Daniels sure does keep me warm in Toronto. Well, I love too much red. Hey, no, I can say, and my landlord, but I don't like me anyway. There's only one if you don't agree, baby, don't you call me, hey, I'm just boozing below, boy. Hey, hey, bartender, thanks for the shot. And if you don't agree, baby, please don't mind me. I'm just boozing blue. And if you don't agree, sugar darling, burn me. Cause I'm just boozing. I said I'm just I'll say I'm just
Tommy Solo's Famous Friends is a one-man production, meaning that I've done all the work, including guest acquisition, recording, editing, and so on. And hey, if you like the show, why not subscribe and help support us through Patreon at patreon.com/TommySolo. The theme song for Tommy Solo's Famous Friends is a clip from my original composition, The Burn. All rights reserved. And you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thanks for listening, and until next time, cheers.